This is the Ancient Inheritance Guide for Season 12. As usual, we have this entire database with a ton of info. Some of it's not completely filled out yet, it'll get filled out a bit more as it shows up. And really, it's just the unequip hasn't been announced yet. I would expect it from 312 to 315, because we typically get unequip every other week at this point, and this would also land it on the last week of Ancient Inheritance, so everyone can swap stuff around when hitting Prongo on the respawns. The gear, we know there's sets, it's counter and immunity. The stats, not yet, because they didn't post it on Stove, but once it opens in Global, I'll get pictures of all the gear and I'll stitch it all together and I'll put it here. We've got the live updating map, which will slowly update as Asia finds more things. And also this Imgur album isn't live updating, but every once in a while, Bread will post the most recent version of the map in here, just because the website we use updates pretty slowly, it loads pretty slowly, so using the Imgur album can be a lot more convenient. And then this is where the link to this video will go, and then I don't know when Thurber's going to update his thing, but I'll post it here once he does, just so you have somebody else's opinion on what to do. There's this whole unit list here, which I'll go over in a little bit, and this tab has all of the stat gains from level to level for all of the classes. You can also see exactly how much stat you get from gear here. It's roughly 15% to 20%, depending on what sub it is. This just really says that the substats aren't super important, but 15 to 20% is still a lot, especially early on in your classes, so you probably don't want to use completely unleveled gear. This tab's got info on all of the relics, and I'll go over this really quickly later, but if you want more details on this, you should check out the Relic video where I go super in-depth on it. And then we've got this tab, which has pretty much any info regarding any sort of like level stuff or what you get for hitting things in each zone. So this has the chests, which is the same in every zone. It used to be different, which is why it shows every zone here. Here you can see like how much Dragon Rage you need, which does change. It changed last time, and if it changes again, I'll update it. The FRES for mobs, and then you can see the wardens and their stuff. You can see here normal mobs, elite mobs, the amount of dream shards they give, gold, the amount of element, EXP, and rage. Here you can see the bonuses you get for your own personal exploration level, provision cost for every single object and battle. So pretty much a ton of info here. And then we also have the tabs, which have the recommended teams for hitting elites. As well as any blue link is a link to a video that shows you how to hit the mobs. This is all of the elites, and you can also see their skills in this tab if you want to read it without being in the game. And same thing for the wardens and the prongos. You can see their skills, or you can see the teams and unit recommendations here. And here you can see their skills. So that's it for just the general database. Let's quickly go over relics. Basically, we're just going to look at this. I go in depth on what each relic does and why they're good in the other video, so you can check that out if you need it. But in general, I would say 1, 2, 3, these are the movement relics. You definitely want these. And then flag and shield are the battle relics, with Snakehead and Broken Arrow being the end game battle relics, because these are for leveling and these are for boosting your damage at the very end. You start off with Exploration Journal, by far the best one. You only have to pick between this, this, and this. So just take this one when you start off. Try to pick up one of Flag or Shield and a Movement Relic. And then once you hit Zone 2, that's when you want to get the second of Flag or Shield, which is one you don't have yet if you possibly can. Level until you hit Element level 10 when you're in Zone 2 or Zone 3. And then drop both Flag and Shield for these two so you can start boosting your damage instead. And with your 3 extra slots, you would ideally drop Journal once you have 4 slots and pick up more movement relics. And then these are just some other ones, like Food Supply is really good filler relic if you haven't rolled any of these and you're just rolling a bunch of like really bad ones like these. Food Supply is nice just to give some provisions to people. So that's a quick summary for the relics. And now we can take a look at the unit recommendations. So this is the full list of units for Ancient Inheritance that you should use. Split up by element and also split up by core and other. Core being the ones that are either in some sort of best in slot team or I think are just really good to have. And then other being some substitutes. So for which elements you should pick, I think one of fire, ice, and earth, and then one of light and dark is the common choices. If you're not really going to play that seriously, you could just double up on the RGB elements and then leave the light dark ones for people who play a bit more. Also, you don't have to worry that much about like perfectly splitting the fire, ice, and earth ones, because really 4 people and really good guilds can get away with like 2 people on the fire, ice, and earth will still be enough to kill the wardens, because the wardens die really fast, so it's not really a huge deal. It's more about splitting up the EXP so everyone can hit level 10 more than anything else. And you should also really pick depending on what units you have. Like my add-in is on Ice add-in, and I don't plan on changing back anytime soon, so I haven't been going light for a while. I've just been going dark. Or even though I'm missing Harsetti, I have pretty much everything else and I can field solid teams. So I'll be going dark again this time, and I'm going to be going either Earth or Ice. Not sure yet. So just pick what you have good units for, or just what you like playing. In terms of what units to use, we can start off looking at Fire. For Fire, Hazel, Carmine Rose, Ken, and Lilius is a great team for hitting Prongo. Does a ton of damage. You've got good healing plus attack buff, strip plus unbuffable, Death Break plus dual attack, and then also attack down on his S3. And then Lilius, S3, full cleanse, S1 dual attacks with a random ally every single turn. Good for damage, unless you pull Hazel, but it also lets you clear the Vitality phase. And also you can even soul burn it to get extra turns if you need to cycle her S3 for the cleanse again. So great team. I think this is just a really good element to use. Hazel, Haste, Tenebria, and Sirmia is the general team I use for the Warden. You can substitute these two with like another Deathbreaker like Cirilla or Ball. This just gives you a good combo of sustain, Deathbreak, and then damage for hitting the Warden. With Sirmia just being the giant tactical nuke, and you could also replace her with maybe Tori. Not sure if Tori's going to be better than Sirmia or not, because Tori does get the soul burn, but also, I mean, Sirmia, so we'll see. I just have her down. I have Tori down here for now, because we need to test her a bit. And then for hitting the Elite, you've got Litica, Haste, Tenebria, and Hazel. These two spam their pushbacks and slows. And then Haste has some sustain plus Death Break, and also bleeds to help pad out the debuff so that it doesn't cleanse your Death Break. And Hazel giving one attack buff. Some good substitutes, because sometimes you have to hit the Elite and then you have to hit the Warden right after, so you don't want to use your Warden team, which would be these 3. So you would do something like Litica, Acades, Cirilla, and Carmine Rose instead, because that would still be really good pushback and good debuff spam plus Death Break and sustain. Next, we can take a look at Ice. For Ice, the team that I was using for hitting the Prongo was Brieg, Ran, Elena, and Sigrid. Sigrid has her big S2, S3 nuke on Soulburn, though it is kind of annoying having to make sure that the boss is at the right HP threshold to get the max value. Fene is probably a good substitute. She has double scalings with her attack and HP, so with the classes giving you every single stat, Fene should benefit really heavily. And I'm kind of curious to see how much damage she's going to do, to be honest. And then for hitting the Warden, I was using, let's see. I'm just going to check the database because I don't exactly remember. For hitting the Warden, I was actually doing Angelica, Muse Rima, plus Serene Purity add-in, who I don't have listed here because only really Hall of Trials players should have Ice add-in. And then Sigrid. So that was the team that I preferred the most. Just because Angelica sustains a ton, especially with Rod. Her sustain's pretty much unmatched. I think Diane, potentially, if you have the Penras up at the right times, might be able to help sustain a little bit, but Diane's sustain is not fantastic, so hard to say, really. And then Rima and Addin was just a good mix of Death Break and Slow. So you can substitute those two with any Death Breakers, really, and it would work okay. And then Sigrid just being a DPS. Like the secondary team I used, aside from that one when I was running Ice, was Elena, Ran, Brieg, and Shu. They could also just use Fene now. So you definitely got a lot of options for hitting Warden. For hitting the Elite, it's a little bit more annoying because you want to avoid the whole blind issue. So I was using Lua and Lulica as my debuffers because Lua can S2 50-50 the blind, and then S3 is non-contact. So you ignore the blind, and then Lulica can hold Violin, which ignores miss. It's a really nice combo there, and I was using, you use your Sigrid, Fene, Shu, or some other DPS if you don't want to deal with the, or if you want to save some of your better units for the Warden or something. And then with Diane as the healer. And then these are just some other DPS or debuffers that you could use. So then for Earth, the Prongo team, I haven't really taken a look yet, but it's something that I might take a look at eventually if I decide to go Earth. You can mix Earth with other elements. It's just not something that I really bother looking at, because then it would depend if you're going to elements together or not. I think I have a friend who likes doing Earth and Dark together, which seems like a pretty good combo. I'm just not too familiar with it myself. I think I do have one video using the two elements together though. And then aside from the Prongo for hitting Warden, you've got Ruana, Sid, Helga, and Loka, which is just the old Ice Expedition team, and this kind of just blasts apart Prongo. Not much to really say about that. For hitting the Elite, you just take one cleanser, either Justina or Ray, then 3 DPS. So you've got Gala, Zahak, Violet are really good ones. Sid works okay. I'm sure one of these two works fine. You can just kind of dual spam. And then they also have the cleanse. And then Giselle also has her self cleanse. Some units that can attack buff themselves is nice. And cleanse and some level of self sustain is also really nice as well. And then you got Light and Dark, which are kind of the ones that just want to focus on damaging the Prongo. The primary team is Camilla, Adin, Candy, and A Tywin. This team does a ton of damage, though the secondary team is a bit hard to run just because of lack of good options for. Really, it's the utility, I think, is the problem for Light. So you kind of just slap something together and see what works. And then for the Elite that you have to hit, which is the Asthmatic, you would do something like Camilla, Savior Adin, Conqueror Lilius, and then a Cleanser. Not too hard, you just kind of hit the boss and kill it. And then for Dark, the really good thing about getting Harsetti is we can split up the teams now, because Dark's problem is that it lacks good sustain, cleansers and immunity buffers. So having to keep Hangai and Inos together was really rough, because you have your two best healer slash supports in the same team, and that made it pretty hard to field the second team. But now you can do something like Cowrick, Bologna, Harsetti, plus a cleanser like Kitty or Peyra or Dilibet, because Harsetti does pretty much everything except for cleanse and strip. So, or she does strip. She does everything except for cleanse and immunity. So now you can split up. You can do that as one team, and then have Inos on the other one. Do Inos plus Paulus plus Simple Angelica plus another DPS, which the DPS is the annoying part there. You probably want to pick up somebody with an AoE attack like Arbiter Bildred or Abyssal Euphine or Spectre Tenebria. Just because for the first team, Harsetti with her AoE every single turn, as well as LCB's S2 is good enough to hit the crystal for sustain. On the second team, it's a little bit more of a struggle. But that's one way you could split up the two teams. For hitting the Elite is kind of just rolls over. You just do Inos, Cowrick, and then a DPS and a Deathbreaker, and it's fine. So that's kind of just a quick and short guide on what to use for the units. So that is it for the guide. The link to this database will be in the comments. Please remind me if I forget, because I usually forget. And just AI is kind of coming at an awkward time for me between Monster Hunter and also just a bunch of IRL stuff. Not too much time for me to be doing stuff, but it should still be pretty fun. And of course, I'll be updating this as more stuff is found.